I see it particularly among young people. I think that it's manifested itself in this new attempt to, by young people particularly, to claw their way back to some sort of philosophy that provides meaning for them. You need to believe in God, and you need to believe in a moral system springing from God. And then there are people who are clawing their way back to meaning through partisan tribalism.
Right, because religions have never been subject to partisan tribalism, ever. Moron.
I'm just going to find the group that believes most like me, and I will find meaning in my life by clubbing the crap out of people who I don't like.
Shapiro, have you never heard of a holy war?
All of this speaks to me of a problem that actually did exist in the Enlightenment, and that was that the Enlightenment didn't necessarily want to discard God or Judeo-Christian morality, but it ended up doing so.
Because the Enlightenment was about the quest for truth, no matter where it led. It didn't want to discard God, it didn't start out doing that, but it did anyway, because that's where the journey led them. Because that's the only position consistent with a truth-based philosophy, wanting to get as close as we can to an accurate model of reality, without bias or prejudice.
And so we've been living off of these fundamental premises of religion for 200 years.
How is that in any way a fundamental premise of religion? If it's so fundamental, why did thousands of years of religion not get us to it?
Reason means everything. Well, where does reason come from? And why isn't it just random synapses firing in your brain that are evolutionarily beneficial?
Yeah, seriously, folks. He went there.
We believe in a predictable universe that we can explore through science. What makes you believe in a predictable universe? Where are you getting that from?
Because it works. Whenever we assume the universe is predictable, we're able to make progress. That's not very likely to be the case in a random, unpredictable universe.
Why isn't it just us theorizing, and then some theories work and some theories don't?
That is exactly what happens, you idiot! With the added step of discarding the theories that don't work and keeping the ones that do.
And where do you get the idea that there is a good and there is a bad?
Or where do you get the idea that you can ask this question that has been answered for centuries without needing to appeal to God?
Where do you get the idea of any sort of directional human living?
Directional human living? What does that even mean?
Folks who don't believe in a Judeo-Christian foundation for our civilization, I don't know how they answer that question.
I know you don't know how they answer it, but you can just look it up and then see for yourself how they answer it. It should take you about 10 minutes. You do know how this internet thing works, right?
I believe atheism is obsolete.
How is atheism a concept that the word obsolete could ever apply to? It's a rejection of God based on a lack of evidence. It's not something functional to get supplanted by something more functional. You know, like religion, which claims a monopoly on morality and social interaction and all sorts of things, when we have a ton of non-religious philosophies providing the same thing without any of the baggage. That is what it means to be obsolete.
So eventually we're going to have this clockwork universe where everything is going to hold together. But in fact, along the way, if you've paid attention, that clockwork universe has started to get a little weird. You know, that we have effects at the quantum level that don't make any sense.
They don't make sense to humans because our little monkey brains didn't evolve to be able to intuit that concept, since none of it was ever relevant to our survival. But the universe is under no obligation to operate in a way that makes sense to you. Talk about hubris. You say that quantum mechanics is weird. No, quantum mechanics is perfectly normal. Humans are weird.
Interplays between consciousness and reality that really do, to me, suggest an idea of consciousness at the very beginning of creation.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to fill in a couple of steps there.
How can there possibly be life? The odds against there being life are fantastic.
Asked and answered, over and over again. It's not as if we have no idea how life could have started. If anything, there's an embarrassment of riches. But for one example, look at the work of Dr. Jack Shostak. At any rate, this has nothing to do with any odds. The universe is not random.
And so guys like Pinker have invented this completely bogus idea that there are infinite universes.
Citation needed. At any rate, Steven Pinker is a cognitive psychologist, not a cosmologist. I'm not even sure what research of his you could be referring to.
Well, they used to say that religious people had a god of the gaps.
Right, this is a god of the gaps.
But this
right.
is religion,
theory of the gaps.
science of the gaps, yeah.
What gaps are you talking about? I mean, science proposes theories to fill gaps in our knowledge, and then it sets about testing those theories. This would be a lot easier if you weren't such a complete ignoramus. You could actually give us a clue what theory you're referring to.
There's that, and then there's this other thing which essentially is faith, which is the idea that we're living in kind of a computer simulation.
No scientist has ever seriously claimed we're living in a simulation. They've asked the question, what if we're living in a simulation? What would that look like? And how could we tell? And that's perfectly fine. No questions are off limits to science. But can you cite one scientist who actually posits this as fact? The only scientist you guys have mentioned so far is Pinker, who isn't even an expert on the subject you were talking about. No, scientists talk about all sorts of stuff. Look at how many of them talk about ways to survive the zombie apocalypse. Not because they believe in zombies or anything, but because it provides a great launching off point to discuss science, engineering, and technology in a novel scenario humans have never been in before.
I think our knowledge has gone beyond the fact where we have to deduce an atheistic clockwork world.
Just saying that shows that you don't even know what atheism is. And you must not care, considering that numerous prominent atheists have explained it. Atheism is just a rejection of God. It's not about clockwork anything. Plenty of quantum physicists are atheists.
And it's dangerous. I think that you and I both believe this. It is a dangerous place to live without meaning.
Well, I think it's even more dangerous to live in a place where you have people insisting that someone else, a god or a priest or an ancient book, should provide the meaning of our lives instead of each of us working to find our own meaning.
Followed by, because of this anti-Christian philosophy of Nazism.
Nazis were Christians. This has been incredibly well established. Knock it off.
Followed by these decades of mass murder in the name of this atheist philosophy of communism that suggests to me that the Enlightenment narrative is not quite everything that it cracked up to be.
And just what do you think communism has to do with either atheism or the Enlightenment? Communism teaches that government, or at least party leaders like Kim Jong-un, are gods. That's not atheism. And they do not follow the scientific method. If they had, they would have accepted Darwinism instead of Lyshenkoism, and the whole Great Chinese Famine, the largest famine in human history, would never have happened.
Everything about the words coming out of my mouth is physical. My brain is sparking, my lungs are pushing and all. But the ideas that I'm expressing aren't physical at all.
Oh, whatever gave you that idea? Could you have an idea without your synapses firing? Can you point to even a single thinking entity without any physical form whatsoever? I know you believe that's what God is, but until you can point to him, you can't use him as evidence, and certainly not as evidence in a diatribe that's supposed to disprove atheism. Yeah, sorry folks, nothing new here. I did this video because a commenter suggested it, but it's just the same old prat spewed out yet again. Isn't it funny that, in all these videos that are supposed to disprove atheism, they never let the atheists have their say? They don't even properly define atheism. They don't cite sources or even adequately explain the theories they're supposed to be debunking. It's like if the Los Angeles Angels said they were going to prove they were a better team than the New York Yankees, but instead of playing the Yankees, they just got into a baseball diamond by themselves and threw the ball around a bit. And so, each and every time, you get this dynamic where one ignorant yutz laughs and agrees with another ignorant yutz, and their unthinking flock high-fives each other, and then they all claim they've actually done something, when in reality, they've done basically what the average porn viewer does, with a little less at the end to show for it. Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe and keep these videos coming by donating, becoming a subscriber and getting special benefits, or even for free with airtime. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.